Welcome to Better Relationships, Better Life, where relationships expert Judy K. Herman and her guests share insights that can help you move through conflicts in your 9-to-5 jobs and your 24/7 lives. Crack the clarity code and create deeper connections beyond the messiness of relationships. Here's your host, Judy K. Herman.
A lot of what we discuss on this podcast is also relevant to your professional relationships as well as your personal life. As a speaker and retreat facilitator, I also support organizations and leaders. Find me on LinkedIn, Judy K. Herman, or my website, judyspeaker.com. Our next guests, Angela and Dennis Buttimer, are a married couple who are professional speakers and executive coaches. Together, they've spoken on the TED Talk stage and written 2 books on the topic of mindfulness. We'll take a peek at their relationship and how they help corporate leaders with emotional intelligence, wellness, and performance. Thanks for joining us, Angela and Dennis. Angela, you're a psychotherapist, and both of you have a mental health mentality, but also you help people deal with stress, and you're in the corporate setting. So share with us your passion and why the corporate setting, that you're actually doing trainings and speaking and that kind of thing.
So great question, Judy. You know, for me, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I was always fascinated with the business side of the world as well as the brain. In fact, I fell in love with psychology at 8 years old, and I knew that I wanted to merge the two, the corporate and the psychology. And lo and behold, there was a path for me. And, you know, one of the things is people spend so much time at work, and the workplace is so rich in terms of the ability to help uplift others. And so being able to enter into that arena was just a blessing and a natural fit for me. So when I came out of graduate school, and same with Dennis, we both went into corporate with our graduate degrees in psychology. And it was just a perfect match for both of us. And we didn't know each other then, you know, but we were both sort of on that same trajectory.
That's interesting. Yeah. Any more to add on that, Dennis?
Just to add that, you know, we both had experience working in psych units and addiction units. And we had that background, which is so interesting. I remember, I don't know about Angela, but leaving graduate school, I'm like, I just want to go do this stuff. Teach me how. And then I get out and I walk in like, what am I doing? But I had really good supervisors that trained me and guided me. And so dealing with some of those more difficult kind of issues was actually good preparation, in addition to the EAP training I had already gotten in business kinds of acumen. So I found it was a pretty good blend.
That's interesting. So let me ask you, because here I've been a relationship therapist doing private practice, and then now going into corporations myself. And can you share, like, what have you seen? Is there a correlation between what a person is, struggling with at home, say in their marriage, versus maybe they are like a C-suite professional and they have teams that they're managing? Can you share anything that you have discovered in your work in the corporate world that would be like similar, that would be on a personal level?
So, relationships are the basis for everything. Relationships and our ability to engage and understand ourselves, having self-awareness, but also understanding others, emotional intelligence, is the key to being successful in business with our colleagues, with our leadership, with our customers, our stakeholders. And so what we have seen over the years, over a couple of decades, is that organizations are finally understanding that the soft skills are the hard skills, and that can make or break a leader as well as an organization. So it's super important.
Yeah. I don't really like the term soft skills, actually. You know what?
I understand.
Because they're actually powerful skills.
They're powerful skills. Let's rename it, shall we? We'll call them power skills.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would add is that although it may not be a perfect overlay, the way that a person behaves at home, often they may be behaving the same way at work. That and taking it back to mindfulness, wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
So we're always working with our personality and our temperament. And we see it play out in corporate in a variety of ways. Sometimes, like you, we see the best come out in people, sometimes the worst, sometimes just some rough edges that need to be worked with because they didn't learn, they didn't know, so to speak, any better. So, there's those sort of challenges.
So are there more challenges, do you think, with those in high places of leadership versus, your average worker
I don't think
in the corporate
so.
setting?
I think that a lot of times our high functioning leaders are better at keeping up with the game face. But inside, because we do so much executive coaching, we see behind the curtain that a lot of them are struggling. They're just a lot of times better able to be poised. So whether you're, and maybe even especially when you're a leader and you've got so much pressure to lead the organization, lead the teams, and you're dealing with a teenager at home who's suffering from depression or perhaps a divorce, those kinds of things. And that's a lot of pressure. It's like a pressure cooker a lot of times for the C-suite.
Yeah. Well, I guess my thinking on this is, and I've heard a lot of stories in the privacy of my counseling office, of course, but it seems that there is, like, folks, I mean, we all some of us really struggle with isolation. We can put on that face and look like everything is wonderful, but we're really dying inside. And so, like, to be able to share with a coworker or something versus maybe someone who is needing to keep up their image and not have anyone with which really to disclose to because they have to keep their image. That's kind of where I was going. And I didn't know if you kind of saw some of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure there to, that Superman syndrome that people a lot of times at that C-suite level have and feel like there is nowhere to turn. And so I was just reading an article, I think it was in Forbes, that said about 70% of C-suite leaders in the US are thinking about leaving their current jobs for better well-being. And I was like, wow, now that is quite a statement. And I think so many famous people have started using their platforms to come out and break this stigma about suffering in silence and saying, no, let's talk about this. Let's get this on the table. And I think it's given a lot of people permission to say, hey, I'm struggling. This is a part of my humanity.
Yes.
I have a guy that literally I've been working with recently, and he decided he went to another organization because where he was a high-ranking VP. And now, for the reasons you're indicating, Judy, he decided to be a regional sales manager doing something completely different. And he feels a whole lot less stress, more camaraderie, less isolationism, because I think it can be lonely at the top.
Absolutely. So, and that's what I wanted to ask, like, what are some of the common issues when going into a corporation? And maybe you can share, like, even the type of corporate training that you actually do. What do you help companies? Why are they hiring you, in other words?
Yeah, it runs the gamut. And I know as, keynote speakers, people want you to niche it, but Dennis and I actually get a lot of requests for a lot of different things. Mostly what we speak about is under the umbrella of leadership and wellness and all things psychology. So that could look like mindfulness, stress reduction, emotional intelligence, communication, the psychology of leadership. So, Dennis and I, what we say often, our business tagline is, when you feel your best, you also perform and live at your best. And we believe that wellness and performance really go hand in hand. And that's the crux of all of our keynotes and our trainings.
Yeah, and our job is really to help people solve their problems, give them good, clear direction and concrete sort of guidelines and strategies and tactics. I have a speaker friend, and he recently said that when people ask him what he speaks on, he says, what do you need me to speak on? What is your problem? And then they say, well, I have a problem with revenue. That's exactly what I specialize in. Now, I'm being a little bit light, but that is what he says. And he believes that, our job's to get in there and not, you have to have some talent in a particular niche, I believe, but not making your lane so narrow, because these days people are needing help with a wide variety of issues, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, So have you had some like feedback? I'm sure you have, with after having been in a corporation and provided the speaking and the training on mindfulness, what some of the results have been for companies.
It's interesting, Judy, and I know you've probably seen this too, in your work, is that the things that we know, it just seems like everybody knows these things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
right, it's like everybody's, meditating. Everyone knows like mind body integrative medicine and how it affects performance and productivity. And, Dennis and I are brain nerds, so we geek out on neuroscience, but a lot of the people don't know kind of what we live day in and day out. We were just on a construction site a few weeks ago, and we continue to get emails and calls from these folks saying, this strategy really has helped me relieve my stress so that I am better at my customer service job, because they work in a very high-paced environment, which they love and they thrive on.
Yeah.
And so giving people, I think, a lot of permission to live authentically and be who they are, while also incorporating some of these strategies. And one of the things that Dennis and I talk about a lot is one size does not fit all. So when we're keynoting or doing corporate training, we are entering whatever topic it is that we're speaking on for many different directions, so that when people leave, they feel like I've got a couple of tools that I can apply.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm just wondering the company as a whole, because I don't know, sometimes I'm thinking that folks are interested. They're interested in profits. They're interested in retaining employees. And I don't know if you have to do a lot of convincing when you do go and present or propose what you're doing. If people really get the benefits of, okay, mindfulness can really lower the stress and they can make you more profitable and all of that. Are there any kind of roadblocks, I guess, is what I'm want to ask, any kind of roadblocks that you think that maybe are blind spots for people that would maybe hesitate to? Yeah.
Because the blind spot is that, as you know, you don't see this other car. Oh my gosh, I really wasn't trying to run into you. You really can't see what you can't see, and you don't know what you don't know. But what you do know, you keep trying to use that very thing. And so we try to ask people about what they're often, Judy, they're more often coming to us than us going to them. But in any case, when they're coming to us, they're telling us their pain point. But now when they're telling us their pain point, we want to really get into it and not just go, oh, okay, you're having some struggles with your employees. No, get them to break it down in terms of absenteeism and medical claims and whatever issues that are going on. A lot of presenteeism, people just sitting there, just twiddling their thumbs or whatever, not really truly present, and ask them what it is that they're looking for. And if we were able to deliver X program that could help ameliorate or improve that, what would that mean to you? And they're off like, oh, well, that would be like the magic bullet. So it's gratifying when we can see some shifts in that. Angela was talking about employees and higher ups emailing us or calling us and saying, I really have been using this one tactic every single day, where I start the day with a positive ritual, for example. And wow, that's really made a difference. I didn't think so, but my blood pressure has started to go down, or I'm better able to handle my workload. Things like that, very, very gratifying.
One of our favorite things, Judy, is we get invited in to do a keynote, and usually by people who already believe in what we're offering. We're not converters, and we don't waste our time doing that. So usually the folks that we're talking to already value what we bring to the table. But we love it when we do a keynote, because that plants the seed and it gets people excited and inspired, and then come back and do some consulting work, whether it's corporate training, executive coaching, so that we can really till the soil and grow that garden for them. And lots of different results come from that. And as Dennis is saying, the client, the organizational client, they know what those problems are costing them, and they know that if we can ameliorate that for them, how much that's going to save them. So they know the numbers already.
Are there any kind of attitudes, Dennis and Angela, that you have seen has been a common block to growth or to a healthy culture, that you've identified or seen? A common thing that would be a block?
Well, I would say, and even beyond corporate, but in corporate would be a closed mind. We know that a closed system dies, that the system, that it must be open. Otherwise, you can't have a breathing, inhaling, and exhaling. You're only like, it would almost be like you're only holding your breath. I'm only inhaling. It's that type thing. So you have to have an opening. And I tell you, things like the pandemic and this new way of thinking and all has forced people. Now, some people stay hunkered down, granted, but many people have started to see now, hang on a minute, I gotta do this a different way. Maybe this technology stuff, this hybrid model thing, I've got to adapt to this or I'm going to be left in the Stone Age. That's what I see as the closed mind.
Ditto. I was going to say exactly that fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. That fixed mindset is a block for people at home and at work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious about how your work, like, do you two work together all the time? Like when you do corporate trainings, you're together, or do you do separate things in your work and your trainings and even in your keynotes?
Dennis, you want to take that?
Well, we actually like to work together when we have those opportunities, and we do. But that's probably, in terms of like training or keynotes, only maybe about 25% of the time or so. Sometimes people really, really want that. It's so unique, but we usually do it separately. In the past, we've done couples work in sessions together. So we do some of those things, but we can do more and go wider when we're separate.
Yeah. Well, you kind of are making me think too. I want to ask this question, Dennis and Angela, does sometimes your work as a corporate trainer or as a speaker, I don't know, kind of evolve into a couple's counseling session or even individual sessions?
Not usually.
Okay.
Those are usually separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. We try to keep those very clear boundaries.
Because you do have, I just want folks to know, you've got a counseling practice as well. And that's a separate business, isn't it?
Separate business. Exactly.
Yeah. So do you refer when somebody says, hey, I've got some issues, I need some help, and you just refer out?
Yeah. If they're a corporate client, we refer them out.
Yeah, that makes it clean for sure.
Yes, it's a must. It can get real messy real quick, as you know.
Oh my goodness, can't it ever? But your perspective and your mental health and neuroscience and all the things you've studied is such an asset as far as what you provide for companies for individuals. We
just love it. It's amazing to just be so passionate about the work you do and get to do it every day. We wake up and we're like, we get to do this work. We look forward to our clients and all the facets of our business. So we're very grateful.
We are grateful. And one of the things that we know, and we actually teach, especially when we're talking about dealing with difficult people, as an example, maybe there's a segment we do on that where dealing with compassion, for example, we are talking about, this other person that you're having difficulties with, they do have struggles and fears and insecurities. They also have dreams and, really good intentions and all these things that we're all mixed bags. And we try to take that same approach with people. We know that people are struggling, they're so yearning to reach their dreams. They're so fearful that they'll come up short and all this. And how can we then design, whether it's in coaching with Angela, whether it's counseling or with the keynote or training we're doing, how can we design this to penetrate and get in there and help people, like Angela said, feel better? We try to tell them, your job is really not to struggle and strive and sacrifice, and you never quite get there. Your job's to actually feel good. Yeah. So many people are alarmed to hear us say that, like, you're kidding. But no, that's actually
like, it's okay to feel good.
Yes, for goodness sake. So we try to help them get there,
Yeah. So how has doing this work together changed the two of you? I'm sure, like you said earlier, that I don't know how you worded it, but there's maybe more appreciation, more love for each other now than when you first met. Obviously, that's the way it needs to be. We all need to grow more in love with each other and more connected with each other. But how have you two done it? To kind of have, I'm like, you've got a dual relationship here. You've got your husband and wife.
Right.
You're also like in business together.
Right.
And some people do husband and wife good, but then they lousy business partners or vice versa. How do you two make that marriage happen? And how have you changed? I know that's kind of a lot of questions and anyway, all in one.
I'll do my best to answer that. I think, it's so wonderful to have someone who understands your passion and understands like why you're up at 4 a.m. working on a keynote, because they get it. They get why you do what you do. They get why you're concerned about a client. And so Dennis and I love our work so much, Judy, that we really do have to set boundaries too. That when we have date night, there's no work discussed. There's got to be a point when we have to take our business hats off and we're back to the couplehood, the romance and the friendship that we share beyond the work. But, when you love your work so much, work and play, they often do blend. And so we're always sort of refining those places where we need to set aside time for just us.
I can tell it on your face and your countenance. And every time with both of you too, it's like, it shows, the energy shows. Any more to add on that, Dennis?
Well, we do have to keep working on that. We are both, of course, as human beings, works in progress. As a couple, we are. So we're always working on our relationship to a degree. Do we need to do, state more appreciations? Do we need to do less of this thing over here? But, I would say for both our relationship, I think Angela would agree, with our relationship and with our professional work, is completely undergirded by our spiritual practice. That is, we get up, we meditate, we pray, we meditate this separately, pray, meditate, write, we really access what we think is the true power in kind of common terms, the quantum field, enter that field that you get to when you're meditating and coming into that alignment. And then we feel like from that aligned place, I can be my best to her, she to me, us to the world, that's actually the platform. And if we don't do that, our minds and our determination, even though we're both very determined people, that alone would not serve us. It just would not be very skillful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me. I think it would to my listeners, our listeners too, because what I believe about being in this profession anyway, as a psychotherapist and now speaker, and then getting into corporate training, such as what the two of you are doing, it does require that continual self-growth, that continual awareness and development of oneself. And I've discovered that, we need to have a lot of grace for ourselves for the ways when we mess up. Can you may I just ask a nosy question of the two of you? Can you share one time in which there was a real struggle and you ended up working through it, obviously, but at the time it was a really dark place in your marriage, in your partnership?
Sure. So Dennis and I, and we talk about this some in our TEDx talk, we had a string of deaths in our immediate family, like back to back to back, 4, in fact. And right before that, our therapist had died. And and it was a
friend.
difficult time. And we were running a business too. And also trying as the oldest children to hold our families together through this. It was definitely traumatic. And, we had an ethical responsibility to not work through it in terms of, in the counselor client role, but we also had to keep our heads above water and stay afloat. And we also had to manage our own emotions through this. And it was very interesting process. And it was a couple of years of pretty acute, intense working through it together. And, when you're under that kind of stress and trauma, And of course, Dennis and I have our own personalities. We cope differently. And we had to kind of figure that out. I mean, it really shone the spotlight on our marriage and how we were going to make it through, and our business too. Is our business going to survive it? And, luckily, as you said, we're here, after 2 decades of being in business, but it was definitely a really dark place and a tough time for us. What would you say, Dennis?
It wasn't. It was very scary, and it was unstable. We persisted in our love for one another, but I'm more extroverted. Angela's more introverted, and we had all this collision of energies, and of course we're not immune at all, even though we do these really good disciplined self-care methods every single day. We're not immune to the grief process. So with grief, you go through anger, you go through emotions, you go through sort of that dissociative thing, or you kind of go back. I'm bargaining with this in my mind, so we had to do that, and I would say we were able to lean into each other, and we were able to lean into some trusted people. Now, not everyone. We were, like many people find out, surprised at those who we could not count on. Wow, what a rude awakening! But we also found some people come to the fore who were just lovely, trustworthy people that we could lean into. So, we needed to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because we see this with other folks, especially if you have a really good relationship. It's easy to not continue to build your tribe and your inner circle, but boy, did it serve us well. And it's one of those life lessons that we teach our clients is don't lose touch with your tribe, and continue into adulthood, connecting with new people.
That's what I'm hearing about the two of you. I mean, you didn't see each other as the enemy. You still stuck together, even you were, grieving differently, and then not isolating or being still in community. I think those are two things that happen a whole lot with couples that are going through darkness. And so I think it's beautiful that you put those two things that you needed the most in your lives at a difficult time when probably it would have been easier to go the other way. And then, actually I did listen to your TED Talk, and I thought, when I was listening to that, I thought, yeah, that's why they are so passionate about doing what they're doing, to help people to not hold that stress and to move. And I just love the creative things you were doing on stage there. No wonder people are drawn to you. But that's what I've kind of discovered, is that darkness kind of gives us clarity, even with our passion and
Absolutely.
what our message is. So
yeah, when you're brought to your knees, I mean, you really find out what you're made of, what your true spiritual beliefs are, and what the people around you are made of. I mean, it is a real eye opener. And if you can get through it, and that's what we're always coaching people, keep going, don't stop, keep getting through it. Boy, there's so much profound, empowered wisdom on the other side of that.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's building resilience.
Yes, that's building resilience.
Absolutely. The other thing that I want to add is, like you, and I can guarantee that's true for you, that like you, we can't not do what we're called to do.
Absolutely.
I was trying to find my way early in life, working in a elder care home in high school. I started as an EMT, and this one guy was so wonderful this one day. So I'm 19 years old. I'm in the front of this ambulance with this older guy, and this is way back. And he says, I was trying to pull from him, how do you do all this and all of that? And he said, hey, man, you know what? He's a very cool guy back then. He's like, really cool. He's like, hey, man, look, you got to go into these scenes, man. These people, you got to be like real cool, right? So you're going to go up to me, you're just going to say, hey, what's happening, partner? You're just going to go up to me, you're going to be cool. You got to bring the love, man. You got to bring the love. See, you going to do some things, but you got to be cool. And I always remember that guy and others who tried to instill in me this idea of presence, when all the while I was just, give me the technique, show me the strategy, let me go fix this. But the people kept telling me, various people, hold on, do this, enter this way. So that's what we try to bring to people.
Yes.
We
beautiful.
try to.
I think there's some authenticity about that, right? There's this real, people want you to be real. And I think that, and you look beyond whatever the blocks are that you think that's there. So that's beautiful. What would you share? Is there one piece of advice that you can give a listener who's listening right now? And maybe this person just feels so drained in their workplace. And then they also just feel that way. There's some real darkness going on personally. What would you tell that person?
I would say to think of next steps as laying stones along a river. A lot of times people are looking for the lightning bolt answer, when if you can just put one stone in front of the next, it could be very simple, like making yourself a healthy salad as a form of self-care and fueling yourself, and then do the next best right thing. That will get you down the path when you feel overwhelmed and brought to your knees and burned out. Just do that next best one thing for yourself.
Love that, Angela.
I agree. And just being able to reassure them, and this is through mindfulness teachings, but that this is, gosh, this feels so raw. It feels so terrible. It's so dark, and it's a temporary condition. It's not possible for it to stay this way, that it will have a life and a process that it'll work through. And that, like Angela's pointing to, doing little things for yourself. You know what? You don't try to bite all this off. You're just going to do this little thing each day for yourself. This one kindness to yourself, this one thing you enjoy doing, this fun little thing. You're just going to do this, and you're just going to build on that. But being able to share, as a human being, we've been there. I mean, it's into some other, and there's other, both of us individually went through some other things growing up and stuff that we know what it's like to be in a really terrified place, let's say, or a dark place. And so more good is on the way, but know that this is just a temporary condition, really.
Love that. And so here's the thing. After meeting with you too, here's what I'm kind of like very impressed with. Number one, that you are like your firstborns in your family of origin, right? And so you already, like, your profession is what you're supposed to do because you were firstborn, taking care of everybody, probably. Right. But this beautiful journey, like how often do you come across people like yourselves that are both yoga, people too, like you, yoga instructors and psychotherapists and corporate trainers? Like, what a combination, what a dynamite combination of tremendous power that you two have, being married to each other and smiling at each other and loving each other. That's like so cool. It really blesses me to be with you, for sure.
Thank you, Judy.
We feel that way about you.
Absolutely. Back at you. We're blessed to be here with you today.
That beautiful spirit. By the way, on the yoga, Angela's like, this is way back. She's like, yeah, I mean, really pretty far back. We were kind of, the other day, it's like 16 years or something. And she's like, we ought to go to these yoga classes. So, as a marathon runner, she really ran a lot, all these things. She says, well, this would be really good. I'm like, yeah, you go ahead, honey. And then she convinces me to go to a class. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty good and everything. Next thing she says, I think you would be a really good yoga teacher. And this is my exact words. There's no way in hell I would be a yoga teacher. You see what happens, Judy?
Yeah.
He's a great yoga teacher.
Well, thank you.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's a repetitive pattern. He says and I obey. Is that it? That's how it works.
That's the secret to a good marriage.
Absolutely. Right. So how can people get in touch with the two of you?
They can find us at path2bestself.com. So path, like you're walking on a path, to bestself.com.
Awesome.
You can also look up book motivationalspeakers.com as well, but either one of them's fine. It's great.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks so much, Judy.
All right. You're welcome.
All the best.
I so enjoyed getting to know Angela and Dennis off stage. I appreciate them sharing their journey and how they flow in their professional lives and how their work and play blends together. Here's my takeaways. 70% of C-suite leaders are thinking of leaving their jobs due to high stress, and they're seeking more calm in their lives. Number 2, it's important to know that a fixed mindset, if you're not open That's actually a closed system, and a closed system dies. And it's so important to have a growth mindset when it comes to your personal life and your professional life. And number 3, your job is to feel good. Wow. What stood out to you? Share your takeaways by going to betterrelationshipsbetterlife.com. Next week, you'll hear from another entrepreneurial couple whose lives turned upside down when they discovered their first child was born with a rare genetic disorder. Bob and Wendy Anderson have redefined normal. Until then, I would absolutely love it for you to share, subscribe, rate, and comment in the streaming platform of your choice. See you next time on Better Relationships, Better Life.